Welcome to Energy Linguist, a sacred space for awakening souls ready to receive divine transmissions and the raw truth that sets them free. I am Laura Ahern, a spiritual channel and energy translator here to bring through messages from highest guidance to help you hear your inner knowing, reclaim who you are beneath the noise, and live from the truth within. Take a breath. You've found the space where remembering begins. Hello, everyone. It's Laura, the Energy Linguist, and I'm so excited that you are here today joining me on another episode of Energy Linguist, the space where we get to decode your energy, heal your patterns, and awaken your path through the receiving of divinely transmitted messages. I am so grateful that you're here today. Today, Divinity is looking to support those of you who are empathic in nature. What does this exactly mean? I'll break down the nuances of what an empath truly is, while also first saying that it is much more than just the tendency to have empathy for others. That is part of it, and yet it's much more expansive. So we'll talk a bit on this today. First, Divinity wants me to clarify what it really means to be empathic. When I say that we're supporting the empath today, we are supporting those of you who identify yourself as being intuitive, that have this inner knowing, that have had a sense of things that are to come, right? So sometimes we discuss this type of soul as a sensitive soul, where we feel things big, deeply. Sometimes we are highly emotional, and we have this capacity to experience subtleties within this human realm that not everybody is aware of. First, I want to start by just explaining not everyone is aware of some of the things that empaths may be experiencing because they are subdued, kind of mesmerized by the reality of this matrix that they are stuck in. What it means is they're hyper focused on the sensory, the five senses of the physical world and of its coming and goings. Meaning these patterns, these cycles, these tendencies, these interactions, and the cycles of identity that are happening within their lives. In fact, I feel it in my solar plexus when they channel this. It's wild. You might be able to look back in your own experience with people you know growing up, but there are many people that we may have known in our youth that only evolved to a certain emotional age, meaning most of their biggest core identities are who they were in high school, or they're constantly referencing this core piece of, oh, don't you remember when, fill in the blank. And though that can feel comforting sometimes to be nostalgic, a lot of people are not doing it for that reason. Often it's an indicator that they have not outgrown this emotional dimension of what they experienced at that stage in their life. And so it not only locks our emotions in cycles, but it can lock our identity in cycles. So we will talk a little bit more about that as we continue this channel transmission, because it has everything to do with the nuances of our field and how we are being called to evolve. And it's especially the empaths in this world that are being called to evolve. And so we're going to build into this awareness that they're calling us into. Empaths, by nature, are what I call this trifecta of spiritual gifts. We have this ability to sense things very subtly emotionally, which means usually more intensely, because we're aware of the most minute vibrations that occur in the emotional realm. It also means that we are intuitive, which means we tend to sense things that may be in play within the field at any given moment. The third piece of this trifecta of an empath is that empaths are psychic by nature. Now, I know the word psychic can kind of draw people out or draw people in, But I want to simplify and make it a little more plain for those of you who might think it sounds very out there. What psychic means is the ability to access information outside of one's own system. So what we're talking about here is the ability to access information that is not really of my immediate realm and to be aware and in the interpretation of that information. So this trifecta of an empath, of the emotional sensitivity, of the intuitive nature, and the psychic abilities is what makes empaths the most profound spiritual healers on the planet. Now, up until now, before these awakening times, it has probably felt anything but powerful to be an empath. Now, why is that? Typically because the old paradigm reinforced with much force that emotions were volatile, inconvenient. They were to be feared. In fact, there's huge irony that existed within the old paradigm around that idea that emotions make us weak. That irony is that we were told to reject all emotions, but anger was an okay emotion to feel. So do you see the irony there? Is that the unhinged, unmanaged, reactive emotion was the only one that was acceptable, but all of the other layers of emotions made you weak. And obviously, the way that divinity presents that today, it's obvious that there's nothing about anger that makes us strong. It actually makes us unstable in our field, in every part of our field, and in what it contributes to the field, the collective field. And so as we unravel the old paradigm within this divine feminine awakening, and we start to come into the embracing of awareness that our emotions are actually our power, we start to allow ourselves to see and receive what is possible when we are giving of those emotions. Many of you listening today probably resonate with being told that you were too emotional, right? This communication from the exterior world that your emotions were inconvenient for them, quite inconvenient. And I want to comfort you in that and reinterpret it for you to help create some power around your empathic nature. Your emotions did not make you weak. And though they were perceived as inconvenient, part of the reason for that is that those who were projecting that towards you, that you were too emotional or unraveled, they themselves did not know how to mitigate or manage those emotions. So what they in essence were saying was, I am incapable of managing those emotions, and I am incapable of showing you how to properly manage those emotions. And so we should reject that which is creating this discomfort, and we should reject that which is creating a lot of inconvenience for me in this moment. Many times our emotional state causes things to rise within other people that they don't want to feel or manage, and therefore it creates this rejection through, it feels like this aggressive push. They actually use the word ostracize. So this full-on rejection, like cutting off of your emotional state, the dismissal of emotions. And so what I want you to know is that as an empath, if you've experienced this in your life, which if you are empathic by nature, you absolutely have, I want you to know you're not alone. And I want you to also know that those who are projecting those things on you were doing the best that they could. Because what that means is that those who came before them never taught them how to manage those emotional states. And it is also an indicator that those souls called you into their soul's journey on this planet in the hopes of allowing them to learn how to manage those emotional states. As most of you know, the majority of people who came up against your emotional state probably did not take on that challenge to allow it to be their teacher. And we can't really judge them or shame them for that, because at the end of the day, your emotions are your power. And they probably were overwhelming to others for a lot of infinitely unique reasons within their own experience of you. And it also reminds us that we did not know how to manage that. And so the conveying of what we were experiencing was probably quite trippy or inadequate for what was happening. But what's incredible about these awakening times on the planet right now is it's offering us these really ramped up energies that are cleansing and purifying. They say refining awareness of emotions so that we can come into the utilization of that power to love greater and to give more, to fully step into this new way of collaboration and connection with each other that is disconnected from that old paradigm of competition and survival. So to be an empath now is to be brave enough to claim what you are in that power, to be kind and compassionate enough to yourself to hold space for what you've been through without the blaming of others, and to hold these gifts in the highest regard, to allow them to serve not just you and your children and those loved ones that get to witness you, but all those who you come into contact with, because through our love, we teach others how to love. Now that you have some awareness around what it means to be an empath, Divinity wants me to take you down this avenue. It's like a tunnel. They keep telling me when I jump into these transmissions that I'm jumping into the transmission tunnel. So I want you to come down this little avenue of tunnel with me and focus on one piece of information that they just provided, which may have slipped past, but some of you heard it loud and went, "What? You can't be talking about me." And I'm here to say, yes, I am totally talking about you, which is you as an empath are one of the most profoundly powerful spiritual healers on the planet. It's why you came here right now. And I'm so grateful that you landed here specifically on Energy Linguist podcast, because you are the type of soul that I help to come into this new era of self-guided being, of the trusting of your intuition and your gifts, the ability to interpret it and trust your messages so that you can trust your path more. It's what we do in my community, Ianara. And right now, Divinity is wanting you to hear this message around being a powerful spiritual healer. It's what they are welcoming you into, meaning you already have the innate capacity to have this profound impact. And yet I see they're showing me a visual of them handing you the ticket on the train. Like you're standing there waiting to board and they're handing you this ticket. And the question is, are you going to take this ticket? Are you going to believe in something that may feel impossible or unseen? I understand that most empaths have gone through excruciating experiences on their journey, much of which are unimaginable, especially given the amplified nature of our experiences with emotion. So we've experienced it exponentially compared to what other people have. And yet, I am inviting you to believe in the impossible, to believe what Divinity is channeling to you right now, to say that is a gift. And I will show you how it is a gift, because you have a unique gift to share with the world. And now is the time. Not later. There is no later. And there is no more of acting in accordance with the suffering and the limits and the pain that you have allowed yourself to engage with up until now. The time is now. Understanding that you have a miraculous capacity to impact others makes it exceptionally important for them to talk about something very specific with you today, which is the difference between sympathy and empathy. One of the biggest ways in which empaths stay small and self-sacrificing and never allow themselves to come into the sustaining of sharing their spiritual gifts is due to the desire to heal others. How many of you are thinking I'm crazy right now. Who's laughing at the irony here? Do you hear this? You are a powerful spiritual healer, and yet what is keeping you trapped is your desire to heal others. So, what exactly does that mean? The desire and the nuance that they're talking about here is your desire to do the work for them. It is the imbalance of the heart chakra that bleeds for other people, that is so inundated and flooded with the pain of feeling their emotions that we don't allow them to navigate it for themselves. So let me explain a little bit more about an empath so you understand why this is such a slippery slope. They actually showed me like a slope slipping down into this covert that you can't get out of. Empaths by nature don't just feel for others. They actually feel what the other person is feeling. This is where the psychic ability of an empath is made most obvious, because a lot of times we may sense emotions, and what happens is, as an empath and a human, right, our brains go, oh, why am I feeling this? And so our brains start to work out the justification, right? The rationalization of why we feel what we feel. That's the natural process of our minds. If you look to psychology, you'll understand that we tend to feel something and then try to decipher it with the mind secondary, right? Rationalize it. But what if what you're feeling is not yours? How many of you have been caught off guard by feeling unexpectedly anxious or unexpectedly emotional? And therefore, you started to conclude all of these things about yourself. That something's wrong, that you must know something's wrong, that something's going to happen to someone you love. And it goes down this disastrous, fear-ridden rabbit hole. As empaths, it's important for us to come into the awareness that this sensitivity is often reading what somebody else is feeling. And so once we're aware of that, we know how to mitigate our field better. We protect ourselves. We don't jump into the rationalization and the conclusion and identifying with the emotion, but instead we allow ourselves to consider that maybe what we're sensing is from outside of ourselves. Knowing that as an empath, you have this capacity to feel other people's feelings, it makes complete sense on why someone you love or someone you're caring for, you may want to do their work for them. Because the pain, you feel it so deeply as if it's yours. In fact, much of the time when we feel pain so intimately that way, it does align with that frequency of pain in our own minds. Meaning things that you have previously experienced that are on a similar pain frequency will come to mind. And so now not only are you feeling their feelings and empathizing with that, but you're reliving some of your painful experiences, which gives you this ferocious fire to want to help the other person. This desire and the ignition of that fire is such a positive, powerful thing. And yet, if left untended, it can be the very thing that causes us to keep that soul trapped in their patterns. When we attempt to do the spiritual work for someone, much suffering occurs. Not only do we prevent the individual from discovering their innate power and their gifts and learning how much they can rise above through their own resources, but we also begin to burn ourselves out and sacrifice ourselves to save one instead of many. Now, the irony is this: you're actually not saving the one, you're keeping them trapped. You create reliancy on you for their healing. In fact, it's much of the reason that I stepped out of one-on-one care when people were coming to me and I was seeing them in a physical location, because they would feel incredible when they left. Their whole life felt like it shifted. And for a time it did. And then they'd come back. And I heard the cycle and the pattern and the repetitiveness. And then they'd feel great. And they'd leave and they'd come back. And as a healer, someone who really desires to have a substantial impact, something that's sustainable, right? A sustainable impact on my clients. I was like, no. And it's not about money. I could have a whole career doing this because you will be coming back to me all of the time. That is not what I want for your soul. In no way do I want your thriving to be dependent on me. And right now, during these awakening times on the planet, that is what we are up against, because we are finding ourselves as intuitives and spiritually interested souls, getting very curious about the other realm, getting very curious about our own innate spiritual gifts. It's why I teach people in intuitive training to expand their gifts. It's great to be interested and curious in all of these things. And yet, there is what divinity shows me, a massive amount of codependency. And what they're calling it is spiritual codependency getting created, even for those of us who are spiritual leaders or spiritual entrepreneurs, to continue to lean into other people's messages in order to better understand our path. Now, you might be noticing the irony here. You're like, Laura, I'm leaning into your messages to better understand my path. That may be so. And I love that. However, what I am here to show you is that receiving inspiration that validates our inner knowing is much more powerful than receiving information that we are codependent on in order to move forward on our path. There's a nuance. There is a difference there. And so the aim here is, yes, let's receive the inspiration from people who are spiritually connected. But we first must know ourselves and trust our inner guidance enough so that when we hear that, it reinforces it, it ignites it, it clarifies it for us, but that we aren't reliant on it to know what to do next. Because what I want for you is to know yourself and to trust yourself. And it's imperative as a spiritual healer on this planet, as an empath on this planet, that we don't trap other souls in a spiritual codependent pattern on ourselves. That we are serving them in a way that's inspiring them to build their own muscles so that they can navigate their own path with their own intuition, with their own confidence, with this inner knowing that can rise and meet all obstacles and overcome them and reach the highest pinnacles of success and joy and fulfillment. It's why divinity wants me to tell you a little more about this nuance of sympathy and empathy. They're inviting you into having empathy for those that you love or are serving, but not sympathy. There are two different vibrations at play here. Empathy says, I understand, I feel you, because empaths literally feel you. I feel you. Sympathy says, I feel sorry for you. Sympathy says, you poor thing. I don't know how you will survive this. Let me help you. Let me do that work for you. I got this. You don't. I got this. Do you feel that? It's why many of you may not understand when you've heard me channeling on other podcasts when I talk about the massive amounts of sympathy I received after being widowed at 29 years old. It was great, intended. The intentions were pure because they love me. But what was being portrayed was mostly their pain for me and their sympathy of, I am so sorry. We don't need to be sorry for if we are truly connected with the divine knowing that all things serve our highest and greatest good. Because then there's nothing to be sorry for. Instead, we can hold someone in their pain. We can understand through our own experience and hold space to know that theirs is uniquely, infinitely different. And yet hold them in a way that says, I believe in your capacity to grow. I believe in your capacity to get through this. I believe in your ability to decide through this. I will tell you that there is one person I can recollect after being widowed that held me in the empathic nature, not the sympathy, but the empathy. And that is my sister, Courtney. She leaned into her own divine knowing to ask divinity, what do I need to do for Laura? How can I help her through this? And what they instructed of her was to just be in the holding of space for me. She was there in every moment. She listened. She didn't try to tell me what to do. She didn't try to tell me what was best for me, ever. She was a beautiful sounding board of someone that I could trust to say all things to that would cheer me on to know and trust and reflect to me that she believed that I could do all things. And I did. And that would not have been possible for me without having that type of support. Many people love you in a way in which they want to do for you, but much of that creates dependency. The best thing we can often do for someone is to help them to hear and see that we believe in them, that we believe in their capacity to rise, to become stronger, to decide for themselves. In allowing them to decide for themselves, we teach them that they can trust themselves. And as those of us who are spiritually inclined and intuitive, we get to validate that they can trust themselves through our own spiritual messages. Much of the reason that my clients and those in my community have such massive growths in their life is because I get to be by their side every step of the way to validate that which their soul already knows. The infinite wisdom that is already speaking to them and through them. And to reinforce that so that it no longer is buried under the intellect or buried under the lies and silenced by all of the contradictions of reason, but instead it can come to the surface. It's being nurtured. It's being cared for in a way that we begin to trust our intuition and our inner knowing more than the falsities of the material world. And so as the empath I know you are, I want to invite you in to recognizing this powerful nuance of sympathy versus empathy, to draw you into the claiming that you have the potential to positively impact souls on this planet in a way you may have never imagined up until now. And to know that you are never alone in this journey that can feel so isolating. If you are looking for a spiritual home where you can develop your inner gifts and be seen and loved as you are with no judgment, I want to invite you to join my community, Ianara. You can go to lauraahern.com to find out more about this sacred community. Within this community, everything changes because there are so many different avenues of support, courses, connection, your soul family waiting for you. People who you will speak to and it won't sound like foreign language to them. They understand the language of your soul. And it would be my absolute honor to invite you into understanding the language of your soul with more clarity and confidence so that you can walk your path with infinite trust in your inner knowing and trust in your ability to meet and overcome every obstacle that may come so that you can rise to your highest potential and your highest levels of contribution and sharing your light on this planet. May you be ever blessed. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode of Energy Linguist. I cannot wait to be with you again. Namaste. Thank you for being here, for listening with your heart, and for opening to the truth meant just for you. If this transmission resonated, I invite you to visit lauraahern.com for free resources and sacred support to help you accelerate your awakening and walk your path with more power, trust, and grace. Until next time, trust what you feel, honor what you know, and believe in your power to create something greater than you've ever imagined.